Scooby and the gang face their most challenging mystery ever, a plot to unleash the ghost dog Cerberus upon the world. As they race to stop this dog apocalypse, the gang discovers that Scooby has an epic destiny greater than anyone imagined. Directed by Tony Cervone, written by Matt Lieberman and Adam Stekiel.
IMDb has their version of the synopsis. I say, the folks at Hanna-Barbera took one look at the attempts at the Dark Universe reboot and said, I want some of that.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you remember those old Hanna-Barbera mashups from the 80s and 90s? So do I. They kind of brought that back in this movie. In the form of Scooby-Doo. Hello and welcome to the American Recut. I'm Brendan.
I'm Nick. It's been 10,000 years, but at last we awaken to watch a new masterpiece hidden within the gems that is the online early access.
And I thought I was spared.
Scoob.
Ugh. I thought I was spared.
Oh, we'll never be spared. Bad things will come out for all eternity. And if there's one thing that they say when they rise from their graves, it will be Extended Cinematic Universe.
Yes, rising from the grave. Let's talk about that.
So the latest in kind of the soft reboot of properties that have been rebooted 5 times in the last decade is Scoob, which has the unique twist that instead of focusing on Scooby-Doo or Scooby-Doo's gang or any of them, they focus on a lot of other Hanna-Barbera projects and kind of rely heavily on the idea of, do you recognize it, to sell their movie.
Yeah, it's like Hanna-Barbera fanwake in some way, you know, or like little trivia, like, do you remember this? How about this? How about that?
But let's go ahead and go category by category first, since we will go ahead and go spoiler-free first, and then dive into it when we get into our later section where we ramble a bit further on. So, characters. I actually like what they did with most of the characters in this reimagining.
They did get a nice revamp in contrast to their older counterparts, I agree.
Now of course, we know all the characters from Scooby-Doo. It's practically cultural lexicon at this point. You have Fred, you have Daphne, you have Velma, Shaggy, Scooby.
The Tolkien gang, really, yeah.
But it also introduces some characters from Wacky Races, which was very visible in the advertising and was well known. Characters like Dick Dastardly and Blue Falcon.
Yeah.
The dog as well.
Dynamite.
Dynamite, thank you. But we have all these characters that are introduced, and generally, I like what they do with a lot of these characters. They all seem to have their own motivations, their own goals, and they generally come across as a bit more interesting than you usually get with kids' movies like these.
I will agree with that. The characters were actually very charming and, you know, a little more improved. The effects themselves, or you want to still go into characters?
Yeah, I want to stay with characters for a bit.
Yeah,
because it's worth noting that if you're familiar with the latest Scooby-Doo animated series, which is the New Adventures, I think it is, or New Mysteries.
Oh, yeah.
They take a lot of the tropes from that one as kind of the shorthand. Fred still has his borderline love relationship with the van. Shaggy still has his kind of small man syndrome. Velma and Daphne have their own traits as well. They pull a lot from the most recent version of Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, they are actually voiced by an impressive cast as well.
Some of them are, yeah. Like you have Will Forte, who is excellent as Shaggy, and is pretty recognizable immediately. A lot of the main cast characters, like Fred, Velma, etc., are kind of voiced by characters who either you wouldn't expect or who don't really ring a lot of bells. People like Gina Rodriguez as Velma, Amanda Seyfried as Daphne, or Zac Efron as Fred.
That one surprised me.
That one surprised me.
Mark Wahlberg as the Blue Falcon also kind of surprised me.
Oh yeah, but I was going to continue that with the Wacky Races characters. Those ones are much more the celebrity cameos and the people who are brought in to be cameos. Ken Jeong as Dynamite, Mark Wahlberg as Blue Falcon, Jason Isaacs as Dick Dastardly, etc., etc., etc. Even Simon Cowell early on, which that one was an odd choice.
That was.
To the point that it actually derails a lot of the movie and gets a weird amount of focus on Simon Cowell, someone who hasn't really been relevant for the last 6 years, I would say, as far as like cultural lexicon goes.
Right, it was so bizarre. Simon Cowell as himself just waltzes onto the set. Like,
well, now, I wouldn't normally mind, like, okay, sure, have a Simon Cowell reference. It's a bit dated, but whatever. It's a kid's movie. Maybe you made this a few years back. Who knows? But they keep harping on Simon Cowell being in the movie over and over and over.
Oh, yeah.
Which feels weird because his role is so small. He has such a small role in the plot. He basically just shows up to trash talk Shaggy and Scooby and then leaves. but they keep on bringing him back, like mentioning him over and over and over.
They mentioned him so much, like how much of a jerk he was for that comment he made about Shaggy and Scooby.
It's very strange. It's definitely a place where you feel the corporate meddling of, well, we gotta milk the angle. We gotta make sure Simon Cowell gets milked if you're going to bring him in. He was expensive. But aside from Simon Cowell, most of the characters end up looking pretty decent, being pretty decent, and generally being fairly fun to follow.
Oh, yeah.
In terms of effects, by and large, it looks fine.
Very polished, I
wouldn't say it's that polished. Like, this is not like a masterpiece animated film. This doesn't like do a lot with its setting or with its animation style.
No, but I think that's where a good amount of the money went, because it does look pretty shiny, for lack of a better term.
Here and there, but it looks fine. I'd say a lot of the money probably went towards celebrity actors, if anything.
That's true.
But yeah, there's nothing really special to talk about with the effects. It looks fine.
Yeah.
Admittedly, there is Simon Cowell, who looks particularly awful in this.
Tiny face.
Very tiny face. Themes. The themes are so basic in this one.
Very.
Very, very basic themes. Friends good. Dogs good.
Trust your friends. Friendship will prevail. Yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, it's bog standard. You've seen it a million times.
It's a kid's movie. What do you expect?
And the plot of this one...
that's where I just felt I lost
that
it
is
there.
this movie's biggest shortcoming for sure, because it kind of gets completely hijacked by the Wacky Races cameos.
Absolutely.
And I'd say that if you're looking for a Scooby-Doo movie, this has very little Scooby-Doo or the gang, and a lot of Wacky Races and the greater Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe being brought in.
Yes.
Which is such an odd choice.
It really is.
But, the main thing to think about with the plot is that the main characters, the presumably main characters, don't really impact the plot much. They mostly get dragged along by things that are happening to them.
Oh, yeah. Point A, point B kind of like dealio.
I mean, it's constantly Dick just pulling all the strings and constantly doing everything while everyone else just reacts to him, which it's bog standard in animation movies like this, and I get it. It's not supposed to be a complicated plot, but it's just boring to watch your main characters when they're constantly losing out or constantly getting outsmarted over and over and over.
Right.
Especially in a series like Scooby-Doo, where it's supposed to be about figuring out the plot and figuring out the tricks they're using. There's no reason for this to be a Scooby-Doo movie. This could have been a Wacky Races movie.
Oh, at best, yeah.
Let's also go ahead and go into an extra category, 60s nostalgia and the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe.
God.
So, yeah, this movie, and this ties into the plot a bit, this movie relies heavily on, I recognize that moments, where you have to be familiar with Wacky Races, you have to know who Dick Dashley is, you have to know who characters like Captain Caveman and Blue Falcon. You have to recognize who these characters are, because this movie does not do the work to establish any of these characters.
You said it exactly. This isn't really so much a Scooby-Doo movie, but rather just like a Hanna-Barbera crossover between so many different franchises. Because, I mean, they throw a lot of characters in there and also a lot of references in this movie.
There's a ton of, like, 60s nostalgia in this movie, which
Yeah.
is cool, because in the nostalgia cycle we're in, it should be 90s. Or maybe, well, I guess 60s, 90s, 20s. Yeah, it kind of adds up, but it's a bit too long in the tooth.
Who was the target audience for this, do you think?
I don't know. I don't know, because we're getting to the point where nobody's really nostalgic for Wacky Races or Hanna-Barbera.
Well, I couldn't remember the name of Captain Caveman until he actually said his name, you know? I mean, like, I know that guy, but for the life of me, what the hell is his name?
Tracy Morgan, by the way, is Captain Caveman.
Yeah, fun fact.
Which, he's cast oddly, because he sounds much more just Tracy Morgan than any character he's voicing.
He does.
Which, yeah, this movie just feels dated, is what I would ultimately say before getting to spoilers. It feels very dated.
Right.
Like, you have Simon Cowell references, that's like 15 years too late.
Kids aren't going to know who the hell Simon Cowell is. What the hell?
Well, I mean, there's a point where everyone knew who Simon Cowell was. That was 15 years ago.
Right.
Like, it's got Simon Cowell references, it's got a bunch of Wacky Races references, it's got a bunch of Scooby-Doo references, like the old Scooby-Doo, like in the 80s, 70s Scooby-Doo opening.
Yeah, which is why I kind of accuse it as fan wank in some ways.
Well, of course it is. It's a Scooby-Doo movie.
Yeah, but I mean, are you like trying to pander to a broader demographic? Are you like trying to rope everyone in under the Scooby-Doo license or franchise? Like, come on.
Yeah. They are explicitly using Scooby-Doo as an IP to launch their universe on its back.
God.
But yeah, so let's get into recommendations before we get into spoilers. Would you recommend renting this for the $20 early access?
Oh God, no. No, $20? God, no. I would be reluctant to even see this in theaters for $12.
I would say this is a very middle of the road from me. Like, see if you want to, it's fine. Don't see if you don't want to, you're not missing anything. I would say, though, this movie is right on that border where it's not bad enough that I would be aggressively against it, because it's, like, not harmful in any way, and it's not, like, being aggressively stupid.
Right.
But it's also not good enough that I'm going to champion it or try to argue in favor of it.
Right.
It'll probably do well enough, especially with the success of Trolls 2, with their attempt at the same marketing idea. It'll probably do well enough to maybe kick off the Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. So I would expect probably a Wacky Races movie next.
Oh God. Oh yeah, that's true. We might get that next now that the kiddos have been acquainted with these characters.
Well, I mean, I think that they're kind of judging the waters by this movie, in my opinion, and it's going to do well enough because it's not bad enough and it's appealing enough to kids that it's going to be good enough to them to greenlight and say, yeah, let's try the Wacky Races movie next.
I'll agree with that. We've seen worse kids movies out there. We've seen worse movies in general. This one's pretty much just benign, so yeah.
Let's get into our spoiler talk. Spoilers ahead. We're going to talk about plot elements. There's not much to spoil, but still, you are warned. Spoilers.
Right. No, and like Nick said, if you haven't seen the trailers, you pretty much, if you have seen the trailers, you pretty much know the premise.
To an extent, though, because they don't really talk about like what the plot of the movie is, because it's a very bog standard action movie MacGuffin plot. Where it's just hunt down the MacGuffins, don't let the bad guy get the MacGuffins.
Right, and they do kinda conceal the MacGuffin, but,
Not really.
Not really.
I think the part of this movie that worked the best for me was Dick Dastardly as a character.
Oh, yeah. He's the classic, Nair do-gooder, Nair villain.
He's a Nair do-gooder, but he's got a heart of gold, because his whole point of this movie in opening the gates of hell and unleashing Cerberus is so he can go and get his friend back that he accidentally trapped there.
Yeah.
Like, he does all this to save his dog. Like, that's kind of nice.
Right, to save his little buddy.
And the movie also comments on that as well.
Yeah.
Which, that's the other thing that works for me in this movie, is the amount of meta jokes that happen. Like, you do get a few places where they have jokes about, like, tropes and writing tendencies. And those are the places this movie shined for me. Like, there's one scene I remember in particular when you have Fred, Daphne, and Velma at the bowling alley trying to follow up on what happened to Scooby and Shaggy. Mm-hmm. And you got the bowling attendant who's just kind of talking about things like... Yeah, I bet they probably wouldn't have gotten grabbed if they had all their friends there with them. Honestly, if I was their friends, I'd be carrying a lot of emotional baggage from abandoning them in their time of need. Yeah, there's moments that genuinely work in this movie, like the opening where you have the kids all getting together and meeting each other, which, considering what most of the movie is about, felt completely unnecessary, unfortunately. It's also the best part of the movie.
Yeah, I thought the origin story was very... charming.
It was charming.
It was a nice introduction.
It has nothing to do with the rest of the movie, because it assumes we know these characters already.
Yeah, it does.
It's the kind of thing that if we were in the editing process for any other movie and any other kind of thing, we would say, okay, chop out the origin story, don't need it. We know the origin story, we know what it is, it doesn't contribute to the plot, cut it.
If they just open with the
either we cold open on where it opens anyways, or we just begin with maybe the Blue Falcon and like whoever his son is,
Brian.
Yeah, but we begin with Brian inheriting the title Blue Falcon and seeing the seeds of him being nervous and not sure what he's doing at first. Because the movie's way more about him and his arc.
Oh, but Nick, then it wouldn't be a Scooby-Doo movie if it focused on Blue Falcon.
It does it anyways.
It does. It totally does.
There's some moments that genuinely work in this movie to the point that I can't completely say don't watch this movie because it has moments.
Oh, no, as they were saying, the characters and some of the effects were decent enough. It's just...
The effects are fine.
The plot, though, is what really loses me.
Yeah, the plot's garbage.
It's like, you go into an old school Hollywood video or somewhere, a video store, and you rent this movie for like 99 cents. This is what it kind of feels like to me. This is the kind of movie you just go into in the summer.
I can see it.
Rent for 99 cents.
I can see this being one of the many straight-to-DVD Scooby-Doo movies of the 90s.
Yeah, because, Hanna-Barbera has it. This isn't the first time they've done this. They've done all kinds of other mashups like this.
Yeah, I would say that the other part that works for me is the character-to-character interactions when it's not, like, plot relevant. Like, there's a lot of great moments between Shaggy and Blue Falcon that really work.
Oh, yeah.
Like, when you have Shaggy kind of calling out Brian, being like, you're actually in a position where, like, you have a lot of weight on your shoulders, you're not really equipped for this, you've kind of been shit on by everyone that's around you. I get it. You're probably really nervous. How do you put up with it?
Big shoes to fill. And he just kind of lets it crush him.
He just kind of, like, walks away totally dejected, like, whoops.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of good character moments like that really work for this movie. I would say, okay, so if we're talking about like Scooby-Doo movies lexicon, all the best movies of the past that they've had.
Really? Any best movies of the past?
Well, like Mystery Island, way up at the top, right?
Zombie Island, too, I thought was pretty good.
Yeah, there's Mystery Island at the top for me. That's a live-action one where it's like scrappy the whole time.
Oh, God.
That one's great. And then there's a Zombie Island, which is really good. This one's very middle of the road for the Scooby-Doo at home movies.
Right, because there have been worse.
This is one of those ones where it's like the Michael Jordan kind of crossovers.
Okay, that's one way of putting it.
They clearly just bring in a crossover character to get some slight interest. It's a very 80s style tactic.
Yeah.
Like cartoons where cartoons used to bring in like a celebrity voice actor when they were still getting that idea through their heads.
No, right.
Before Aladdin came and just destroyed the wall that was there.
That's a good point. They did do that shit a lot, in the 90s with, like, Michael Jordan, and they did that a lot with the Animaniacs, so...
I have to admit, though, I think it would have really helped the movie if, like, when Simon Cowell was in, they all just stopped saying, Simon Cowell from American Idol? Just like, yes, it's me, Simon Cowell from American Idol. I have a mystery for you to solve, gang. It would have been at least a nice homage to the old stereotypes of the show.
Yeah.
Which I think it still might have been, but not done well enough.
But Simon Cowell is just so dated. Why
he's
him?
He's super dated. He's not really relevant. But they really hammer home, wow, we got Simon Cowell. And one little thing I thought was unintentionally funny was they bring in Simon Cowell, who looks horrible in this. He's got like a tiny face. He's got like a realistic style where everyone else has these very exaggerated, cartoony looks to them. It's all very weird. But then during the last parts of the movie where they bring in Simon Cowell again, he mentions cats, which is funny because it made me think, which one is worse for the CG, his face or cats?
Oh, that's kind of a draw for me because they were both kind of hard to look at.
Also, Henry Winkler was in this movie. He was an off-screen voice, which seems weird for Henry Winkler, but he's been taking these kinds of roles.
He has. Even in the Adam Sandler movies, he's been taking on these kinds of roles.
These really weird background roles where he's like, I'm Henry Winkler, bye!
BoJack Horseman.
He's wonderful in BoJack, though. I love him there.
I do love him there, too. Bless you, Henry Winkler. You are a national treasure.
But yeah, so with spoilers in mind, would you be able to recommend this movie even for just casual viewing?
I would show it to my kid if I had any. But, I would watch it with my kid. But to watch by myself, like, if I'm perusing through Netflix and I see this, I'm like, nah.
Yeah, this is super meh for me as well. It doesn't do enough with the premise. It really is not a Scooby-Doo movie. Don't be fooled by the inclusion of Scooby-Doo characters.
Mm-hmm.
It has some good moments here and there, and it's got potential if it goes into like a proper Hanna-Barbera universe.
Yes, it had potential.
I think that this is kind of a weak start. Not the worst start I've ever seen. It's not The Mummy. It's not Tom Cruise's The Mummy. But it's a weak start. It could get better from here, could get worse from here. We'll see where it goes. But I'm not motivated enough to be against this movie. I'm not motivated enough to be for this movie. It's got potential. It could be good if they give the writers a bit more room and a bit less corporate meddling.
Well, okay, let me ask you this then. So, if they were to kind of continue this expanded universe, what movie would you like to...
Wacky Races.
Wacky Races? Okay. That's fair. I would like to see Hong Kong Phooey.
Bring in Wacky Races, but bring in this just bring in like straight up, the anime Redline?
Yeah.
Bring in that. Just bring in like a plot line that's like, okay, here's an intergalactic race. It's super dangerous. Everyone's allowed to use whatever weapons they want. Get to the end, and then we have just the wacky racist shenanigans that happen. We follow maybe one or two characters, like maybe we follow Blue Falcon and
Dick Dastardly
and Penelope.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Because she was always the deuteragonist.
That's right. Yes, because she was the owner of that sputtering car. That's right.
Yeah, she had the umbrella thing that she always had.
Yeah.
And it was always the thing where like Dick Dastardly would try and mess with her car, Blue Falcon would protect her.
We do need Dick Dastardly back. He was a very charming character.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
He's wonderful. The performance is great. Everything about him is good. Keep Jason Isaacs as Dick Dastardly.
I wholeheartedly agree. You know what? I'm sold. If you're
maybe make him a bit less weirdly beefy looking.
I thought he would look... Well,
he had
that's
really big
actually...
shoulders.
That's
really
true.
big shoulders.
Because in the older version of himself, he was a lot slender.
Yeah, he was just a scrawny little guy.
He was a scrawny little guy.
But yeah, maybe tone down his shoulders a bit. Don't give him the wow shoulders. Just, tone his shoulders down a bit. Make his design a bit more reasonable.
Sure.
Otherwise, though, I think Wacky Races could be really good if they're willing to go like with the premise. Maybe like Guardians of the Galaxy style, where you have like crews of people on the different spaceships.
That would be fun. All right, Hollywood, if you're listening in on this,
They're not.
They're not. But hey, optimistic. Make a Wacky Races movie. It's been a long time since we had.
They're going to make a Wacky Races movie. That's without our input. Now, if they make a Hong Kong Phooey movie, that's going to be the other one.
Ooh.
Because there's an arcade machine with a Hong Kong Phooey on it.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I saw that. And he was an action hero-esque, so I mean, hey.
He was supposed to be a parody of like the Kung Fu movies of the time, if I remember right.
Yeah. And I mean, hey, if maybe bring that back, see what you could do with that. I mean, the material's there. Just like with this movie, the potential is there. You just have to have decent writing to kind of back it up.
So, yeah, to summarize, I've got mediocre hopes for a Hanna-Barbera extended universe. And I think this will do just well enough to get them to greenlight another movie and say, we'll see how this one does. Maybe we'll get a Guardians of the Galaxy type success where nobody expects it to be good, and then it's really good.
Yeah, right. All right, well.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, this has been Brendan.
I'm Nick. F the cops.